Hey everybody, welcome to the info webinar on the all new Thriving Blind Mastermind. And I did a Facebook Live earlier talking about it, and I've been talking to my kids and my colleagues and friends and family for weeks about this, because honestly nobody can believe that I'm able to do something like this after knowing where I began this journey. So I don't know where you are on your journey. I intend to find out from you though over the next couple of weeks as we get ready to launch this big program, because I am certain I've been there. I've been crying on the couch. I've been cheering on the sidelines. I've been everywhere in between. And I still have up and down days when I've got a 20-year-old, almost 17-year-old. Those are my blind guys. And I have a sighted daughter that is almost 16. And that is a whole nother webinar that I could do. I'm going to jump right in. And like I said, I'm still a little challenged with working all this at once, but here we go. Look, it's all about learning and learning curves, right? So who in the heck is Kristin Smedley? If you don't know me, I have, like I said, my Michael and Mitchell are my blind kiddos with CRB1 LCA, Leber's congenital amaurosis. CRB1 is the gene mutation. We are one of the lucky folks, I guess, if you want to call it lucky, to know the gene. We found out in '09 about the gene being CRB1. As you can see in the picture, if you're able to see the screen, both of my boys are white cane users. They are Braille readers, and we'll get to the impact of those words on me 20 and 17 years ago in a few minutes. Here's if there's sciencey people in the crowd. Hey, more power to you. Here's a little slide for you. This is the CRB1 LCA retina. I'd like to throw that in there for you science folks, because I am in awe of you. I wish I would have paid attention in high school in science a little more instead of writing rap songs. I am an 80s girl. But this is the CRB1 LCA retina. Here's what I wanted to really get to though. This picture of it looks like a little family out on the water. I actually did a poll on social media, maybe it was around this time last year, asking if people thought that this was a peaceful or stressful picture. And those of you in the boat of hearing your child is blind, or your child has a rare eye disease, or your child is going to lose their vision, you may feel like me. People thought that this was one of my vacation photos and thought it was a gorgeous, peaceful shot. And I say, this is the equivalent of the day that I found out that my firstborn son, who was about 5 months old at the time, this was the day when they told me he was blind, and I had no idea. This to me was what my journey started out as. I was set out on the water with my family. I was literally told, good luck. And it felt like I was getting set out on the water. It was getting dark. I had no idea, no land in sight, no resources, no idea how to paddle that boat. And it was going to get very, very dark. And it did get dark for quite a few years, to be perfectly honest, because I know now that it's because I had no resources for raising a blind child. I had intended my whole life to teach third graders that were sighted and maybe have some kids with some different needs in the classroom. Never would it have occurred to me ever in my wildest dreams that I would be raising not one, but two blind children. The reason I smile all the time now getting to do this work is because somebody told me a couple years ago that I have become the person I wanted in my life 20 years ago. Interesting, right? So I consider it an honor, a privilege, and quite the full circle moment that I get to do this work. And I'm also here to say that if I can get to where I am now, and you'll see through this slideshow of where I am now, anybody can. If you're thinking this is too much, or if you've hit a spot where you're just stuck, like you've gone along fine and now you guys are just stuck and you can't, it's a little hard to figure out some of these strategies. Like for me, getting into preschool was hard, and then considering middle school, high school, everything. So I've been in this boat, literally, that you see out on the water several times in my journey. So I get it. And I have steered my way out of the mess and found resources. And that's what I intend to share. So if you haven't seen my TED Talk yet, please go watch it. You can simply Google or go on YouTube and search Kristin Smedley, TEDx Talk. And you'll find my TED Talk about this moment when this beautiful little face came into me at 3 years old and said, "Isn't this the best day ever?" That's Michael with his now famous line that changed everything for me. Because what it did was change my perception that this wasn't the end of the world. It was the end of my dreams, which ended up to be a good thing. And I could tell you about that later, but it was not bothering Michael at all. And maybe your child or the child you work with or that you're related to is still bothered by blindness. And I do get that a lot of the kids and families that I work with, if they lose their vision later, it's a whole different ballgame than being born without vision. But I can promise you that I've got some tools, strategies, and people to connect you to help with changing your perception and the child's perception, because this is where it all begins. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself a little bit. I had to throw this picture in there of Michael and Mitchell. This is right when Mitchell was born and diagnosed also. So I had the, first two kids and two diagnosed, a little bit of overachievers. Mitchell has CRB1 LCA just like Michael. But the beginning of my journey with Mitch was much different because I had my little role model in Michael that I did not have when he was born. Michael was in preschool at this point, and you'll hear a lot about that as I share stories of our journey. But here's the reason that I really started to panic and realized why things were going haywire when we got to kindergarten. This is why I believe 1000% that a change in perception changes everything. So we're going to do some work in changing how we look at this journey and the challenge of blindness. And I can tell you, my boys look at blindness as a mere inconvenience at times. And I know a ton of people that feel the exact same way, and we can all get there. But here's the issue. Here's the issue that scares me to death. And here's what should be scaring everybody and firing everybody up to change the journey here. I mean, and you'll hear this again in the TED Talk too, but I thought that it was important to call attention to this right now, that 30% of blind Americans are living below the poverty line. 31%, only 31% are getting a high school diploma. Hello, I have one that went through. I have another one that's supposed to graduate next year. And only 14% of blind American students are going and getting their bachelor's degree, staying in college and making it to the finish line. And I can tell you, I don't address the college stuff in this mastermind, in this program, because we are only 2 years in, and I am by no means any kind of expert that belongs teaching anything about it. We will talk in some of our sessions about, and some of the things coming in the next 6 months, about getting ready for college and our experiences at a private school and a huge campus of Penn State. But we will only share our experiences. We don't have a big curriculum about it yet, because we need to get through the 4 years so we know what the heck we're talking about, right? But those are the statistics, on top of 70% of the blind community is unemployed. That's why I am reaching out far and wide to do the work I do, to start changing all of that. And it really begins in our homes, in our preschool, elementary, middle school, and high school classrooms. That's where all that change is really going to happen, and create a whole ambassadorship for this change in perception and change in statistics. So this was my Michael, and you'll hear all about this journey in our weeks and months ahead. But this is my Michael on the first day of kindergarten at our mailbox with his little bus tag. And I always joke that Michael's a firstborn, so I have pictures of every single thing he did. And that is him at kindergarten. I'm going to stop for 1 second. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have to let this new thing with Zoom. I wanted to make sure I didn't have to let anybody else in. Okay, let me just close that. So Michael was so ready for kindergarten. He couldn't wait to get there. And he sailed through preschool. He sailed through everything he did. Like I said before, he did not let blindness bother him at all. But when we got to preschool, the thing that started to change everything and really open my eyes to the problem in this country with perception of blindness, as well as education of blind children, was that in that preschool IEP, or in the kindergarten IEP meeting, they told us that they expected him to achieve at 70% at best of the sighted kids. We were in a regular, very competitive public school, huge public school, just outside Philadelphia. Very, very competitive school. And they only expected him to achieve at 70% of the sighted kids at best, which led to a whole lot of problems. That's why they weren't fighting so much for extra time with instruction, finding all the tools and resources. They just couldn't get their head around that this kid was going to do the same thing as everybody else. So that's why I talk a lot about being on an extraordinary journey, having extraordinary expectations, meaning what this says from dictionary.com, outside of what is typical, usual. And if you have been on this journey for a while, or even if you've only just begun, you may have heard already from a lot of people, oh, that's not how we do things, or that's not how the blind kids that came before did this, or that's not how we've done this before. I heard that constantly. And what I had to set in my mind was that we were going to be outside of what was typical for a family with two blind kids, for a blind child in a regular public school, for a blind kid stepping on a baseball field, two blind kids stepping on baseball fields. I mean, we were just outside of what was typical. I had to change everybody's thinking that I didn't want to hear about what came before. This is how we were going to do things moving forward. And I love that dictionary.com pulls out the word remarkable as a synonym for extraordinary. And I want you to think about that, I get to look back now, and I can't tell you how many people have said it's been a remarkable journey. And knowing where I started on that boat, crying on the couch, everything was going dark. I do smile at least once a day. Of course, my kids have been with me for 100 days in a row. I don't know that I smile that much every day. But in terms of what they've achieved based on where I thought they were going to be, yeah, I do smile a lot. So this is my big thing that I speak on all the time, is that perceptions, expectations, and outcomes are all related. And it all starts with your perception. It's driving your expectation, which is causing your outcome. And my goal with this program is that the outcomes are going to be unbelievably extraordinary and successful for the child that's involved. All of our journeys are going to look different, but we're going to give all the tools, resources, connections, network, all of that you need to get your child on the path to the greatness that they're destined for. Wait, I'm going backwards. I'm terrible with PowerPoint, by the way. There's always someone having to click for me. I end up looking all over at everything else. A little bit of street cred here, and to show you my belief in perception being so deep that I did a TED Talk on it about changing perceptions of blindness. And I have the quote here that says, "I've been blind to the possibility of my son having an amazing life. That's why I was stuck crying for 3 years and scared out of my mind. It was me that had a problem with how I was seeing things. I wasn't seeing his life right. And that's the problem with the majority of our country and our world. We see blindness as a challenge that is insurmountable. And then we're not going and finding all the stuff that our kids and family members need. So again, go look at that TED Talk. It gives much more of the heart-wrenching side of the story. We're here, I'm trying to stay on the positive side and productive, but you can understand that I would bet that when you watch that, at some point in my journey that I talk about, you've been there as well. A couple of other things, and then I'm going to switch the camera back for a sec. Eric Weihenmayer, if you haven't read his book, Touch the Top of the World, go get it. That was the first thing that started to crack, a little crack in the door of my perception being shut to blindness being terrible. But I met folks like Eric. I went and sought them out, actually. Eric may say that I was stalking him a long time ago when I finally met him. But I met folks like him. And this on the left is Tom Lukowski, a vice president of accessibility at Comcast. He's a good friend of ours now. Kathy Nimmer is in the middle. She was teacher of the year in Indiana and top 4 in the country. And Chris Downey, another phenomenal TED Talk. He's a blind architect. Go watch his TED Talk. He's out on the West Coast. But all of these folks and more I've met, I went and found them to give my boys role models, but also to give me, open up my mind for my perception, my possibilities for my sons, and the stuff I learned from them actually helped me in many more areas of my life. I interviewed them all, and I interviewed 13 people total for the book Thriving Blind that this whole program started from writing that book. So I tell you all of that. Well, first of all, if you haven't gotten the book, go grab that, because it's another thing that changes your perception. And I want us all to come in a few weeks when this launches with a similar, I know it's not going to be the same because for some it's going to be a little harder than others that are beginning their journey, with a similar perception, similar view that the possibilities are endless for people living with vision loss. And we just have to get the tools, resources, strategies, and all of that in place, and guide them to thrive. So a few quick things with my guys. These are the things that they've been able to do that I did not think that they'd be able to do. And these are the kinds of things that we'll walk through in each of the modules and the months after the Mastermind launch. I mean, Michael has been in this incredible sports camp for blind athletes. Both of my boys have. They've both been to the International Braille Competition finals out in LA. Mitchell always wants me to have him with pictures with the ladies, as he says. Anyway, this was a few years ago. He was so little. Actually, him and Kaylee is on his right, our left. I don't know if you saw all the stuff recently in the news and all over our Facebook, but they spearheaded that fight against College Board to get the accessible AP exams, and they won. I still go like this, oh my God, they won. They got College Board to switch gears, which is fantastic. We will talk a little bit about advocacy and the kids advocating for themselves, but I'm not spending a ton of time on that because there's just so much other stuff to dive into in the first 6 modules. And then we'll tackle that in the months and time ahead. Michael was in every single honor society that he could possibly get himself into. When he was in high school, I say, you'll see in the TED Talk that I thought that my dreams of prom, a little bit silly, I guess now, but when you have your first baby and you start to think of scenes of their life, prom was a big one. I think because I had such a good time in high school, I just envisioned that, maybe that was something he was going to be left out of. He wasn't. He even made Braille on the forefront with his promposal. He asked his date. It says, I'd be touched if you go with me to prom. And prom is spelled in Braille in chocolate chip cookies for the dots. Too funny. Mitchell competed on his middle school, and Michael was on the high school track team. Mitch was on the middle school team. And Mitch actually just last summer was identified as a top athlete in the United States, top blind athlete. And we went out to Team USA headquarters. All stuff that, if I always say that if my dreams had panned out, are you kidding me? We'd be sitting in some little league field somewhere, right? Once I let go of them and got the boys the tools and resources that they needed, let them follow their dreams, I end up at Team USA headquarters. How crazy is that, right? They both, and you may have seen this before, and it's in the TED Talk too, that both of the boys have been on championship little league sighted teams in our town. It was actually the same team 3 years apart. They weren't on the same team ever. Just Mitchell landed on that same orange team as well, and they both won championships. And then this was like the biggest thing for me when people started to ask me a lot of questions about what my journey was and how did I get Michael from only 70% was expected of him at best to that picture. Again, he's the firstborn, so I have every picture possible of him. That picture on the right of him on high school graduation day with every possible accolade that he could achieve, including he was elected to student council executive board all 4 years that he was in his, like I said, very competitive high school. So that's when I started taking note 2 years ago when he graduated of all the stuff that we've done while I was writing the book Thriving Blind, just keeping a running tab of all the things we've done, because so many people would call me and say, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And be able to guide them better and create some resources. And then, of course, one of my biggest dreams for Michael was that he'd be the valedictorian. And lo and behold, that kid achieved that too. And interestingly enough, tell you a little bit about how I raised my kids. Michael's speech, I'm a professional speaker. He wouldn't let me hear his speech or even know the title of the speech until, I'm going to switch this screen for a sec. He wouldn't let me know the title of his speech until I got there and saw it in the program. And it was about building a team. And I'm always talking about building a team because we've always had to build a team, right? Because I didn't know how to raise these kids. And but Michael talked all about building a team to help you, and it's okay to ask for help and the things you can achieve. But he also said that you need to reach out, look around, and see who else needs you on their team. And encouraged everybody to remember that life is not a one-way street and they need to be out there helping other people, and all boats rise. I was so proud of him, but that has been his experience, that he says yes to help and asks for help when he needs it, and he turns around and helps people with the skills and talents that he has if somebody else needs help. That's how I see this mastermind running, and that's why I love the idea of a mastermind. So let me go back to this. I'm sorry if I'm jumping around and driving you crazy. So why isn't it going to this slide? So what is a mastermind group exactly? I don't want to read this whole thing to you because you could read it yourself, but it's basically brainstorming, education, accountability, support. Those are all the things that we're going to do. But the biggest thing I wanted to point out is that it says that a mastermind group helps you and your mastermind group members achieve success. It's everybody succeeding and it's everybody supporting. That's how I envision this group. That yes, I'll be guiding it with all of my tools and strategies. And then we're going to work with each person and we'll say, you know what, where, if you're stuck somewhere, or if you're worried about next year's school program and this is coming up, other people can share. I'm not the only solution. I don't have every single solution. But the people that are coming in here, I'm certain, will have stuff to share. Even if you've had one win along your journey, it's worthwhile to share to somebody else, with somebody else, that they can learn from you. So the mastermind, I've had a lot of success in being in masterminds for building businesses, building nonprofits. So that's why I wanted to set this up this way, as opposed to a series of videos and like an online course where it's me talking, which might be helpful later. But for this, for right now, I just feel like this is the perfect time to while folks are still trying to get back out in the world, and we're starting school, hopefully they're going to the school soon, this is a good time for it. And why now? I want to show you this. This is just a handful of pictures of me. I've been on stages all over internationally talking about the rare eye disease research, talking about Braille being important, advocating for assistive technology. I've even talked at the FDA for research and about the cost of blindness in our lives, and how much it costs for the tools and resources that our kids need to have a level playing field. I mean, I have talked everywhere, but my biggest number one presentation that I'm often called, I was called away way too much, and then the quarantine hit, and my family was actually breathing a sigh of relief while we were scared to death of what was going to happen, because I was called away to too many different places to give my speech about setting extraordinary expectations. And I can tell you this, the day here's the set extraordinary expectations, but the day that I was at my dream stage was right before the quarantine lockdown and the United States shut down. It was at Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And I say it was my dream stage because when Michael was first diagnosed and I was coming out of my, like after I had my change in perception, I was trying to figure out, I was a third grade teacher and I needed to know how to educate him because that was my biggest fear, that nobody would know, right? So when he was in preschool, those preschool years, as I was trying to figure out what the best education for him would be, it was Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, that I was on their website nonstop. I always joke that their IT guys probably have my picture up, or at least my IP address, right? Because I was always on their website. But then I get invited to do their keynote at their huge conference right before the world shut down. And I'm standing there, and this is going to sound a little egomaniac for a second, but I want you to bear with me. I give my set extraordinary expectations. I gave it with all of my heart and soul, in such gratitude for all the people in that room that had helped me years ago and are still out there helping and supporting all of these kids. And you know, there's hundreds and hundreds of people in this giant ballroom. And then there's this big standing ovation at the end. And it was like, you know, I was so grateful. And then I went back to my hotel room and sobbed like a wackadoodle, because here's what I realized. I loved giving back to all of them and telling them about all the stuff that my boys have done because of people like them, right? I'm in such gratitude of that. But it's the parents and the family members and teachers in training for becoming teachers of the visually impaired. It's you guys, that group, that I thought that's who should be in that room that I'm in front of right now. I just feel like that's where my gift is and my time should be spent, at least for the next couple of years, developing some kind of way to get to as many parents as I can, because I believe it all starts with us at home, day in and day out, as we're trying to, I mean, because you're figuring it out all the time, figuring it out. And when you don't have the tools and resources and perspective and hope, it gets exhausting. And then if you don't have the stuff that, and the gas and the fuel and the support that you need, then it's trickling down, that then the child ends up maybe not with everything that they need. And I just know that from my own personal journey, that's how I was for quite a few years. So I got my head together and went down to the dinner and talked with folks at the dinner. I talked with a lot of folks at the TSBVI about, I was so grateful for the opportunity and all the love I got from that room. But I'm like, I need 500 parents together to see that they're not alone on this journey, to get all the tools, resources, motivation, inspiration. How do we do that? Was my question. And then everything shut down. And I'm like, because we're like, how are we going to get all the parents to these ballrooms? And do we go state by state? And do we have a national one? And then everything shut down. And then it occurred to me, as I was sitting at home trying to figure out how to get the word out, how to still be a presenter and still be teaching about thriving blind, I thought, mastermind group, because I don't want it to just be a one-way presentation yet. I want there to be dialogue. I want to know more about the stuff that I don't know, and really put this together in a way that is phenomenal, and have a group of people that can constantly support, ask questions, and have good answers. Some of the groups, I love them, but if you're not getting good answers in there, then, it's not necessarily beneficial to everybody to be in it. So that's why I developed this program, and we're launching it with everybody that comes in before it begins this July as the founding members, with special huge discounts to be a founding member, because there's going to be some things that I'm asking you to contribute, or we'll do some brainstorming to create the next one that we do in the fall for the next time we open this. Hopefully I can open it in the fall for a new group of mastermind participants, but I want to really learn from everybody else too, and everyone learn from each other. So let me do one last screen share here. And so there's the championship team. I love it. Okay, so remember, I started out on the water, and I don't want any family ever starting their journey with blindness ever again. And I've gone around and talked to huge vision conferences, and I've said that should not be the scene. My dream is that diagnosis day and all along, with every challenge, that there's a harbor I want people to think, Kristin Smedley, Thriving Blind Mastermind Group members, the harbor, that it is so jam-packed with those boats, the tools, the resources, the support, so jam-packed that it's hard to maneuver in that harbor, because it's the exact opposite scene of what I started my journey in. It's the exact opposite scene that most people start their journey with blindness in. And I want that to completely be reversed. And I actually stood and took this picture of the harbor in Vancouver with the mountain behind it, when I was giving my huge speech to a vision conference of 12,000 people, and was able to have a screening of my TED Talk, and was able to say, this is my dream, to have this harbor. And I think that we'll be the beginning of creating this, and then it's going to ripple out from there. And I also want to point out that, if you read the book, Kathy Nimmer, if you read the book Thriving Blind, then you know that Kathy Nimmer in there, that I pointed out earlier, the Teacher of the Year, says that your child is still going to get to the top of the mountain. The path is going to look a lot different than you planned, but your child is still going to get to the top of the mountain. And that's the through line for the mastermind group. So I'm going to go back to my screen for a second and tell you, I just want to reiterate that that is literally the through line for my entire life. My kids are getting to the top of their mountains and everything looks different than I planned. And I remember have two, and even their retina specialist up at Mass Eye and Ear said, they are completely different all the way down to the retina. Like their retinas don't even look the same and they have the same condition. So they have two completely different mountains that they want to climb. So of course, that's my life, right? You would think, oh, okay, I'll come into Mitchell's IEP meeting with Michael's IEP and let's recreate. No, it's a starting point, but it is so different for Mitch. He is such a different person. Everybody that meets them always says that they are such different people. Let's go into, because I want to be very cognizant of time and get to questions if we have them. Let's get to the PDF of how I'm just going to use what's on the website. We can play the typo game because I haven't had my prescription changed in quarantine. So I'm sure that we'll find some typos, but let's get to, where is my website? No, that's not it. Oh, son of a nutcracker. Where, here, Google. Let's try this. Oh, here we go. Look at me. Look at me knowing how to do that. Okay, we're going to go. All of this information is at kristinsmedley.com. You're just going to click on up here, Thriving Blind, and it brings you to this page. And then if you scroll down, it talks about, who this program is for, but I want to get to the download of the program information. And once I get the website running properly, this will open in a new window. But for now, we're just going to do this. We're just going to do an extra click. All right, and here's all the details of it. It tells you a little bit about what our goals are, and I say our because my whole family is involved in this. Me and my boys and my sighted daughter are involved in this, and they'll come into the modules and share stories. Carissa will probably have to be recorded and just as a podcast with no video because she's so shy. But the boys never shy away from the microphone, and they love being helpful to other families and teachers that are looking for resources. It gives you all the story that I was just talking about, and then here's the components that we'll be working with. There's 6 weeks in a row right up front, the launch pad for this. One time a week for an hour, I do a max 30-minute presentation of the different module topics that we'll be covering that week. And the 6 topics are the IEP and early intervention. We'll touch on just a little bit of early intervention, but mostly IEP. And it's not specific goals. We can have a conversation about if you're struggling with goals, but it's more so the concept, perception, the way to handle when that things should go a certain way and the team isn't, those kinds of things. And then we can do specific goals, but you're not going to look at all of my specific goals. I'm going to give you more of the how I got the incredibly huge goals, extraordinary goals to be put in the legal document and adhered to and mastered. So I'll go through stuff like that. The IEP social, I'm just going to smile on that one because nobody else will address it in the schools or the IEPs, at least not in Pennsylvania. We address it here because I addressed it and it was one of my biggest things. And I can't tell you how many people stop me when we're at events like Team USA, like the Braille Challenge, and people come to me and say, what did you do differently because your kid is so different in a good way everybody else? And I tell everybody, it's social. You have to focus on the social side, and there's stuff that's hard to talk about, and we're going to talk about it. But it is what it is because we live in a social society. We live in a sighted world. And there's just some things that we have to address. And I have great stories of success, super easy strategies to talk about in terms of socializing, and some hard stuff to talk about, but we're going to deep dive into all of it. Assistive technology and tools, including how to get easy peasy grants to get cell phones that your kids need to have the iPhone, that it talks, things like that. All kinds of places that you can get funding from to help you with things like that. But we're also going to talk about why certain tools are important for them to have and when they should have them. And I can't wait for the conversations about when people think they should have certain things versus others, when people just realize that they were way too late in getting the kids some things, some get them too early. We'll dive into all of that. Perceptions and expectations, of course, for all the reasons that I already talked about that. It will not be the same presentation that I just did. It'll be some deep dives into other facets of it and where it ends up taking you. Independence, which mostly is orientation mobility, a little bit of advocacy in there. But like I said, we're not going to spend much time in the first launch, the 6-week launch, on advocacy. We'll save that for later. And extracurricular stuff. And that's everything from neighborhood sports to Cub Scouts to church stuff to volunteering, the whole gamut. And one of the things that I will say in the perceptions and expectations when we lay out this whole thing is I want everybody to understand, for Michael to be standing on that stage as the valedictorian and got a standing ovation with hooting and hollering from all these kids that voted for him for student government in all those years, a lot of it had to do with the social and the extracurricular. And we're gonna dive into all of that. And some folks might think, oh, I just saw a typo on my paper there. If you see it, message me and I'll send you a prize. Anyway, but there's a method to the madness with some of the things that I talk about in terms of the extraordinary, outside the norm stuff that we did that I know is a part of Michael's and Mitchell's success. Watch the TED Talk. Okay, then we're going to have the second component is monthly Zoom things like this, where again, it'll be a half hour on a topic. We'll bring in some special guest speakers once in a while. Other times it'll be me giving information. Sometimes it's stuff that is, we have something on the schedule like advocacy, and the world shuts down for quarantine and we have to rearrange our schedule because now we got to talk about how do you get accessible stuff for school? What can you do when you're stuck in the house? Those kinds of things. So we might have to switch some stuff up, but those will be the monthly things for each month after the launch of the first 6 weeks. Again, with conversation, because the biggest thing with this mastermind is having conversation between everybody in the group. And then there's a private Facebook group that will launch. That'll probably open it will open prior to the 6-week launch so people can start getting to know each other before we go into the mastermind. And I'm guessing that'll be about a week from now that will open that. But once you register, you'll have all this information and how to get into the Facebook group and what to do once you're there and how that's going to run. But that's a private group. That not one of those that, oh, if you answer these questions, you can get in. You have to have gone through the mastermind program to be in that Facebook group. And we're going to be real strict about that because you'll see, we'll talk about all this in the mastermind. But it's important to me that we're all on the same page of support, guidance, working outside our comfort zones and pushing each other to really guide these kiddos to do great things. And you can click to register. And then the one-time investment of $597, that's for everything I just talked about. Me and your mastermind members for once a week for 6 weeks for the deep dive into those topics and the launch. And then every month after, once a month, having the deep dive into topic and conversation for an hour. In addition to the Facebook group and support from everybody that comes into the mastermind program. I say for a lifetime. You kind of get stuck with me for a lifetime when you become like part of my tribe. And I know that everyone else that comes in will be the same way and we'll all be helping each other. I will say because of everything that's happening in the world right now, and everybody's financial situations being crazy, plus the fact that I'm looking at this as really all of us working together to iron out this launch and how we want the topics to go in the 6 months that are coming and setting up the next round of mastermind to be even better. That's why I wanted to do the 50% discount, because you get to be the founding member and forever say that you're a founding member of the Thriving Blind Mastermind and be a part of watching this start from just a few of us, which is how we're going to do this, just a few. We're going to keep it very small. And then grow to reach, the goal is to reach every family and every teacher of the visually impaired that is impacting a blind child, because I believe that that is what is going to change that 70% unemployment rate and all those other horrible statistics. That's how we're going to do it. That's the investment in your child, in your child's journey, in the children that you impact. That's the investment for that. So I'm going to turn this off and say that's the gist of the Thriving Blind Mastermind group. I am beyond excited, like I said, to be able to do my daughter just pointed out to me the other day that my journal there, I'm writing all of the ins and outs. I'm one of those old school people. I have to write it all out for this program and then I put it in the computer. But it says the future belongs to those who believe in their dreams. And, mine were crushed 20 years ago. And I've never been so happy that my dreams for my boys were crushed. And they've been able to live their own dreams. And they've only been able to do that because they've had the support, the tools, the resources that they needed to level the playing field and let them rise to where they were wanting to rise to. And they've been able to do it. And I'm excited to share all that I know with all of you that are trying to do the same thing, but might just not even know where to begin. Or you might have started just fine and you're getting nervous about the next steps in the journey, or maybe you had an epic fail and now you've got to reset and rethink things. We'll meet everybody where you're at, but the goal is that all of blind and visually impaired children, no matter what the top of their mountain looks like, that they all get there with us cheering and supporting along the way. So go to KristinSmedley.com/thrivingblind2, or just go to KristinSmedley.com and click on Thriving Blind. Get all the details. Once you register, you'll start getting all kinds of fun emails from me with start dates and questions and the Facebook group, and we'll get to know each other there. I'll go live a bunch of times to get everybody going and meeting each other. And if you have somebody that you believe this would benefit, please share it with them so that they can get in on the ground floor too as a founding member as well. So thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can also email thrivingblind@gmail.com. Thanks.